are broadcasting now, so people will start joining us. Welcome everyone. I love how quick and efficient people are. Nothing to do with the fact that we obviously you got the email, I think about 10, saying there's only 100 places via Zoom, get on early, otherwise you'll have to go onto YouTube. But we love to add the drama last minute, so hopefully that's something for everyone. So we're now live on YouTube as well, so anyone that, if you've got colleagues joining that can't get into Zoom and they're kind of panicked messaging you, just tell them go over to YouTube. They've all got the link. You will see myself and the lovely Josh Leigh on your screen. I was going to refer to you as Joshua then for some reason. I don't know why.
Just go with Josh. Whatever you want to call me, as long as it's not mean. Call me anything you like.
Okay, we do encourage heckling, Josh. So if you're saying don't want people to heckle, then that would be disappointing. But yes, welcome to everyone that is joining us so far. Those of you that are joining us on Zoom and those that are with us on YouTube as well. Great to have you this morning. As I kind of normally say, a little bit of Zoom housekeeping. If you can open up your chat along the bottom of the screen, there's your chat box. Naturally, it's, I believe, set to all panelists. If you can just change that to all panelists and attendees, and if you can just start introducing yourself, that would be really useful. So kind of name, maybe the organisation you're from, but really, we're really keen to hear the income streams that people are from that are joining us today. So if you're from direct marketing, digital, community and events, trust, whatever, do just pop that in the chat so that we start getting a bit of a feel for where your background's from, and then we can I guess, not getting Josh to last minute adapt his content, but at least we know where the interest lies. Morning, Alan. There you go, first off the mark. We've got people coming through, so yeah, great to see that. So as I said, open your chat box along the bottom, change that from all panelists to all panelists and attendees so that we can kind of get a bit of chat going. As we go through the webinar today, do feel free to kind of post your questions as we go, and we'll address them or we'll save them to the end. We might not be able to get through all of them, but we'll try to get through as many as possible. If you're joining us on YouTube this morning, there is a chat function on there. So you can, right on there, I've got one of my team, and we'll try and pick up those questions if they're key as well. You won't be able to see the Zoom chat or the YouTube chat if you're on one panel or the other, but I can share around afterwards so that we've got the kind of transcript with everything. As I said, please do introduce yourself and the income stream that you're on. But now to introduce Josh Leigh, who's on the screen with me. So he is the integrated marketing lead at Ecosia, which some of you I'm sure are using. It's the ethical search engine, which plants trees with every search. So make sure you check that out if you're not already aware of them. I met Josh 5 years ago, so a long old time. We were both much more optimistic and youthful in those days.
What are you saying? We still are. Thank you very much.
prior to the pandemic, no, we are. So Josh when he first moved over from Australia, where he'd worked at 2 different charities, and then we met. I helped him secure a role at St. Mungo's. He then moved on to Amnesty. Both of those roles were kind of traditionally direct marketing, but then moving over into digital. And from there, he moved agency side to work at Open, working across a range of charity clients, and really kind of started honing his digital fundraising ability. And since then, he's now moved to Ecosia, as I said. The reason I wanted to reach out to Josh and get him to join us today is because he's obviously straddled both the commercial sector and the charity sector, specialising in traditional programs as well as more digital. So I just thought he'd have some really great things to share. I've always been really impressed with Josh's energy and enthusiasm for learning. His career has been based around embracing change and honing his experience. So I just thought he'd be a great person to share some top insights into kind of the top 10 things that you should be doing in digital fundraising, which is what we will cover today. Josh, did I miss anything out there?
You missed out about how handsome and charming I am, but I guess I can let that one slide. And yes, absolutely a pleasure to be here with you today. Ashby, as Ashby said, we've known each other for a long time through a lot of different haircuts, but here we are today to chat digital. So yeah, are we ready to dive right in?
I'm just going to go into Ashby Jenkins recruitment, Josh. I've got to do a bit of...
Oh yes, no, you do that. I'll have a glass of water.
Yes, so for those of you who haven't worked with me before, obviously I'm Ashby from Ashby Jenkins Recruitment. We're a recruitment agency specialising in fundraising, digital and innovation roles across the UK. As evidenced by Josh and mine's relationship, we take a really relationship-led approach, genuinely caring about the people that we're working with, both candidates and client side. And we aim to deliver excellent quality service, matching great talents to lovely organisations. And this webinar series is one of the ways that we've been supporting the sector since the start of the pandemic. So we've covered loads of different topics. If this is the first one you're attending, all of our videos are on YouTube, so do check them out. We cover a range of things to help people adapt to the new way of fundraising. And then outside of webinars, obviously we recruit for great people too. So I will start sharing my screen. Thank you everyone for introducing yourself on the chat. Really great to have so many people there and from different income streams. So I will open up the slide, which starts with a traditional Australian greeting, just in case we didn't know where you were from. So Josh, talk me through, I guess, a little bit about why this is an area you're so passionate about.
Well, yeah, it's obviously a big good day to everyone to start off with. This to me, I think, I was just having a chat with Ashby before this, and there's a story that I really love telling to nonprofit fundraising. I think it's so important now, given everything we've gone through over the last 9 months. But something that has been a very clear difference for nonprofits, and the reason that our sector really needs to learn and learn together, is that when you look at the way that brands in the for-profit sector operate, if, say, for example, Pepsi stuffs up by doing a really tone-deaf commercial with Kylie Jenner, people will just drink more Coca-Cola. In the nonprofit sector, I believe we need to learn together and look out for each other, because if one nonprofit does something wrong, or if the media goes after them, every nonprofit will lose fundraising, every nonprofit will lose income, every nonprofit will lose support. So I really love saying that a rising tide lifts all boats. And that's what I'm really here to do today, is to make sure that we're rising the tide of digital fundraising together so that we can all benefit from it. Corporates and for-profits are obviously doing a lot of really amazing digital activity as well. And I think there's a lot we could learn from them, because they're increasingly talking about their values and how you could do good in the world by buying a product. I want to make sure that us and we as a sector are staying competitive with that and really trying to innovate constantly on what we're doing, and not just resting on our laurels when it comes to traditional channels or what we think our audience wants, but thinking outside the box a little bit today. So what we're going to do today is I've pulled together 10 examples of ways that you could either begin or optimize or really take a digital fundraising program that you already have to the next level. They're going to, as you'll see, they scale upwards towards some really complicated things, but they start quite easy. So I think let's just dive right into it. Ashby, up to the next. This slide is obviously 2 grain silos. What this slide means, and this is something that I really want to emphasize to anyone at any level within an organization, is that having the siloed approach between digital and fundraising is not the best way to deliver the program. It's also going to hold you back in a lot of ways. In my experience, every organization I've worked at on the client side has had a similar split, and a lot of clients that I've worked with have had that split. A lot of fundraisers don't think of themselves as digital, and vice versa. When I was at Amnesty, for example, I made the effort to go to the digital team meetings every week and ensure that we were really bridging that gap. And I think this is absolutely crucial. So really rethink that structure. It's just something I wanted to address first and foremost, is don't think of yourself as digital fundraising. Think of yourself as an amazing fundraiser and what that entails from there.
Sorry, Josh, just to say as well, particularly over the last 7 months with so much change happening to traditional challenge events and community programs, for those fundraisers that are on this today that come from those backgrounds, as Josh said, think of the digital elements of your role. You'll be doing more digital fundraising than you're aware of, whether that's supporter journeys, whether that's managing web pages, whether it's kind of like looking after Facebook groups and things like that. So don't just think of yourself as a community and events fundraiser. Think about those digital skills that are transferable too.
And I think the next slide actually demonstrates that really well. This will probably look very familiar to a lot of people. Oh, back one. This will look familiar to a lot of people. This is really where traditionally you might choose your channel first, if it's direct mail or email or social or phone or SMS. Then segment your audience and then make your ask. And if we go to the next slide, this is a little bit more like what bigger corporates are looking at their audiences like, or how I'm really advocating for a lot of nonprofits to rethink their audience approach to more treating it as an ecosystem of content. So from here, you would have your audience at the center of everything that you're doing, and you'll think about the content that appeals to them, which is on the next slide. Think about the content that appeals to them, the channels you could use to reach them, and the asks that you could make. Over a couple more slides, actually. Yeah, and the asks that you could make. So really treat it. Community, just putting community first, and actually thinking about the fact that to your audience, they're not seeing a difference between, oh, can you still hear me, Ashby?
We had a little glitch there.
Oh, that's all right. I think my earphones have just passed away. Yeah, your audience isn't thinking about the separation between the different teams. They don't see these silos. They're only seeing the amazing stories that you want to tell and the concepts that you're distributing. Oh, sorry, I'm just going to.
No, don't worry. There's always going to be technical issues with these things, so don't panic. And it was only kind of a second or two that we missed.
Oh, bro. I don't want you to miss any of my wise words. So yeah, essentially what I'm saying is don't think about things from your internal perspective of the channel, or the team or the silo, but actually your audience doesn't see that split. And this is so much more important as you digitize, because when you can communicate with people and tell these amazing stories in so many more channels, the audience is really getting that same story in a lot of different places. And you, as Ashby said, you do have the skills to do it. You may not think that you do, but you are actually probably more digital than you think you are. So if we go to the next slide, this is the structure that we're going to go through today. The session that I'm going to go through is going to have something for every fundraiser. This doesn't just mean IG, it means if you're in corporate, major donors, relationship management, trusts and grants, whatever kind of income stream that you're managing, there are opportunities to bring digital communication into that. And there are opportunities for you to, I mean, you may already be doing it, you don't even realize, and to really optimize your program through some of these digital tactics we're going to cover off. I kind of graded them from easy to hard to hardest, easy to harder to hardest. This is not to say that they should be inhibitive in any way, but it's just to give you a sense of the resource investment. And for each example, I'm actually going to say to you, this is the kind of resource investment to expect, be that financially or human resources. And then there's a few examples from nonprofits, but also for-profits and how they're doing it well. Because as I said, corporates have this huge luxury of just competing with each other like animals. We don't have that. We need to look out for each other, but we also need to keep an eye on what they're doing, because increasingly they're using the kind of purpose-led storytelling that we're using in these channels. And increasingly the audience is not going to be able to tell the difference between your charity and the next leading consumer brand on the shelf. So yeah, I think this is about making sure that we're really keeping an eye on what's happening outside of our own bubbles and what we can learn from there too. As Ashby said, feel free to ask questions at any point in the chat box, or if you're on YouTube, in the chat box there. Otherwise, you can reach out to me afterwards as well. So yeah, should we dive in? Strap yourselves in. As I said, I've got 10 things. That's not to say that there are only 10 things, but these are 10 things that you can do that can get you started. And the first one is get yourself a Google Ads grant. This is easy. It is something that, if we go to the next slide, it's got a little more detail. It's something that Google offers. They offer $10,000 US of free ad spend every month on the Google Ads platform. So Google Ads is the new name for what used to be called AdWords. They consolidated AdWords, YouTube, Google Display Network, a few of their different digital advertising tools into one place last year. They offer this grant to anyone in the world with a registered charity status. So if you've got a registered charity number, which I'm sure all 200 of you do, then do that registration. It used to be, I haven't done this application in a very long time, but it used to be not too complicated. I have heard that it has gotten more complicated over the years, just as they try and make sure that they're giving the right money to the right people. Having said that, it is a huge resource. And then if you wanted to do some search engine marketing, you could look for agency support or bring someone in-house to look after it. If you wanted to look at any of the other Google Ads tools, I use a fair few of them and I highly recommend it. We will send this deck out as a resource afterwards. All of these are clickable links. So there's a couple of slides of resources at the end. And on each of these slides, there'll be something that you can engage with. Just that'll take you straight to the checkout page to start filling in the paperwork to get a Google Ads grant. I'm making it that easy for you, but I highly recommend it. Over to number two. Number two, this one is just a general resource that I have personally learned so much from. If you're in the UK, it's the Internet Advertising Bureau UK, or the IAB UK. I believe they are an international body, but they're a membership organization that looks out for the regulation, the rights, the interests of digital advertisers. If you go to the next slide for me, Ashby, this one is super easy as well. So they have loads of free digital marketing resources and amazing events. I haven't been able to go to any of the events since coronavirus has taken over our lives. So I don't know how they've done the pivot to virtual, but I assume it's been done very well. Back in the day, they used to have a huge annual conference where they brought in brands from across the sector, agencies, nonprofits, for-profits. Through this organization, I've also sat on roundtables representing the interests of the nonprofit sector in a room full of for-profit companies, and really just making sure that we do have a seat at that table when it comes to discussing digital advertising in every kind of avenue that takes. It's free to join if you're a brand or an advertiser. If anyone does want to join, you can contact them or just reach out to me and I can put you directly in touch with the membership manager. He's a really great guy. And as I said, nonprofits join for free. Just consume everything that they put out. It is so valuable. It's just an amazing resource. So then over to number 3. User-generated content is golden, or UGC. This one is super easy. If you go to the next slide, I'm going to lead straight into this with an example. So this is something we did recently at Ecosia. So we had an out-of-home billboard campaign start yesterday, I believe, across Germany in a bunch of major cities. To do the creative for that, we wanted to do something localized and personalized. And we thought, what can we do to bring the consumer, or rather bring the user or the supporter into the creative? So we used organic social to get audience input into the out-of-home creative, creating engagement and buy-in before the campaign was even live. So the billboards go up yesterday, but for the last 2 weeks, people have already known what the creative is going to look like. They're already talking about it on our digital channels. We are now going to do a photo shoot on the weekend and then take the shots of the billboard and put them back in and close that feedback loop and really bring content from the user into what we're doing. This is just one example. There are so many ways that you could use user-generated content, and it's super easy, and it really connects the user to the brand and really brings your values and their values bang together. There are ways to do it really, really easily in this time when we're all having to do things virtually as well. So it's a great engagement tool on organic social when you can't engage with people in the physical world. Yeah, over to the next slide. I can't remember if I had a second example of that. Maybe I didn't. No, that's all right. Moving on to number 4. So we are kicking into the harder category. And as I said at the start, this isn't to say that these are things that should be prohibitive, cost prohibitive, resource prohibitive. It's just to say that they do take a little more work than what I've talked about so far. Build a list with digital Valex on Facebook. So Facebook has an amazing ad format called the lead gen, or the leads ad. It is something that came out a couple of years ago, and through the leads ad, you can easily capture people's name, address, phone number, any data you need to capture on them. Through the Facebook platform, when the person clicks on the ad, or on Instagram, which is part of the Facebook family, when they click on the ad, they get a mini web form pop up, and it auto-populates their details if they've got that turned on their Facebook, which most people do. So then all they have to do is hit submit, and they've given you the data that you can then move over to an email program, an SMS program, telemarketing program, or DM, or whatever, what have you. If we go to the next slide, I've got a couple of really great examples on this. Full disclosure on this one, this was something developed by Open when I worked there, but I did not work on this particular client or this project. But this is the Terence Higgins Trust, where we used the lead gen ad format on Facebook to deliver a targeted value exchange campaign. So Valex can go in so many different ways, so many different methodologies to do a value exchange campaign. What we did was what they did rather, I didn't work on the project, but I loved it. They took some protest sign copy from decades ago, from Pride protests years ago, and put it on a tote bag and offered that tote bag for free to current Terence Higgins Trust supporters or to new audiences they wanted to reach. In exchange for the free tote bag, you would submit your data and you would go into a telemarketing pool or an email pool, or however they wanted to use the data at the time. It's a really great way to engage people. It is in the harder category because you need to consider fulfillment. You might want to work, so say for example, you're in community and you wanted to do this idea, you might want to work closely with your IG team because they'll know much more about fulfillment, but you might know more about the audience or the community. Or you're in campaigning. As a twist, you're on the campaigns team at an Amnesty or Stonewall and you want to bring something in as well. So this is something that I think has loads of potential for breaking those silos down and not just being an IG product, but actually being an integrated product that you can all come together on. Ashby, on the next slide, I might have another example. No, I don't.
I've just got a couple of questions, Josh, just going back a little bit. So when you were talking about the membership organisation, obviously sitting at a round table with for-profits as well, and just I guess in terms of corporate fundraisers being on here, I know, and this may be as irritating as when people go, oh, have you thought about approaching Morgan Stanley for a Charity of the Year partnership? But I'm not sure how many corporate partnerships teams actively seek out pro bono opportunities from big brands in regards to their integrated marketing. And would that be something that you would advise IG teams to do or corporate teams to do to try and have, especially if they've got kind of no's from prospects, So they were trying to look to work with Coke to reach out to say, well, actually, in that case, can you support us with our integrated marketing and get some expert advice from brands where they've got bigger budgets?
Absolutely. I've seen this actually in my time at St. Mungo's. I distinctly remember our corporate fundraising, one of our corporate fundraising leads and one of our acquisition leads working closely together. I forget the name of the corporate that they were working with. And I did spot that the acquisition lead, Emily Whitaker, is on the call today. But I remember they worked together on how one particular corporate partnership could yield more benefit than just being a partner of the year, for example. Another really strong example of this is the Cadbury campaign with Age UK that happened recently. Cadbury actually reached out to Age UK, maybe when I say recently, maybe over the last 2 years, and said, we want to do an ad campaign that ties into your brand. And from there, this amazing corporate partnership blossomed. But actually, it started by being an IG contact point. And I think that when we think about integrated campaigns and we think about breaking down these silos, it really is just throw everything you think you know about those silos out the window. Corporates and IG, and those two teams can work really closely together. At Ecosia, when we work with corporate partners, we really have that larger integrated approach, and we make sure that we're thinking, what else could this partnership be from an individual user perspective? Could it have editorial benefit to it? Could it tie in with an influencer? So really, I think integration generally doesn't necessarily just have to be digital. It can be anything, but it's more about your mindset of doing away with the silos. So yeah, absolutely. And that ties in really well with obviously going into digital and bringing digital to the table too, if you've got a separate digital team.
Great. And then in terms of the user-generated content, I'll just switch back a little bit. Just in terms of this, guys, that are on here today, it'd be really useful to hear whether you've had any examples of user-generated content where they've kind of done something and then tied fundraising to it. So if you've got anything really great that you've done that you'd like to share, like please do so, because that would be really useful for us to hear. But it can come down to anything, Josh, can't it? So if we're looking at community fundraising programs have been really badly affected over the last 8 months. But if, say, a fundraiser films themselves doing an activity, whether that's a bake or, throwing roses off or poppies off the top of a building in remembrance for Armistice Day, that's stuff that can be filmed that people can then donate to and the organization can take ownership of.
And you know what? I think an amazing example of this right now isn't a traditional charity, but Fridays for Future. As this youth movement, they do so much user-generated content, particularly as they've had to go digital. So a lot of the digital virtual protests that have been happening over the last few months has been a case of saying to people, send in photos of yourself protesting with your cats at home, which is personally what I was doing with my cats. And even there was an action last week where it was write something on your hand, hold it up to the camera, and then the Fridays for Future team stitched it all together and generated content using the user-generated content. And it just paints this picture of the size of your movement or the size of your community or the size of your user base by collecting really diverse images and video from all over the landscape there. So yeah, absolutely. I think it's so good, such an amazing tool.
And with this as well, would you advise, so say the users posting on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever, and what would you advise, I guess, charities in terms of, because traditionally people would be like, oh, great, they've said they're interested in doing something for us. Let's message them for their email address. Let's then get them to go to the web page to sign up to the product, blah, blah, blah. Is it better now we need to be more reactive and go back on the channels that they're already using? So making it as easy to do fundraising via Facebook rather than sending them through the website or through the supporter services team?
That's something, a discussion we're really having at Ecosia right now, is saying that when we communicate with average members of members of our community, no one's average, everyone is superior, but members of the community, but also influencers, communicate with them in the channel that they're in. And that is absolutely bang on, particularly for younger generation and the younger audiences. Speak to them in the channel they're in, go to them, don't try and make them come to you. Every time you try and make someone take an extra step towards you without you moving, that's a reduction in your response rate. You need to look for opportunities to go to your audience in the channels they're on, in the subjects they're talking about, in the way that they want to be communicated with, and not just meet them halfway, but go to them and I guess show them that respect, but also it's going to have a much better reflection on your brand and you'll get more engagement out of them. So yeah, absolutely. We literally have just, over the last 2 weeks, said, you know what, our social media manager will manage a lot of the initial communication with a lot of people. If they're on Instagram, we will talk to them on Instagram. And I think maybe just thinking about how that could work for your brand. I know a lot of you will have much larger files or kind of different audiences you're reaching out to, so check the feasibility. There's a really good example in number 10 that actually touches on that. So I'm just going to keep you all hooked a little bit on that.
We'll see that. Lovely. Let's head back to number 5. Sorry,
We're up to number 5. This one, so we're at the halfway mark, everyone. So I hope your bums aren't too sore on your seats, and I hope your tea's not going cold, but we're at number 5. Integrate everywhere with custom audiences. This one is in the harder category because this one, I think, I really have to stress this, is think about your organization's privacy policy and what it covers as far as the use of data and whether or not the data you hold under GDPR, or if you're in the US under CCPA or whatever data regulation you're adhering to in your market, just really be sure that it's covered by that. I just want to say that as a caveat, but then I'll talk about it in a little more detail and you'll get a sense of why. So if we click over to the next slide, what this means is, I'm going to explain it with an example. Say, for example, you have a direct mail campaign that you're planning. You've got an amazing concept. It's been turned into an amazing, highly responsive needs solution story, and it absolutely knocks your socks off. What you could do to optimize this campaign, if we click over, consider adding an email journey to it. So this is probably like your file may not have a high penetration of email addresses, but something to factor in on your existing file, but also for any new data you capture. This isn't just for IG. Sorry to use another IG example. I came up through direct mail, so love myself an envelope, but this is the same could be said for a lot of different channels. So if you've got your direct mail file and then you have a high enough penetration of email, consider using email to really unpack that story in a different way. So if your direct mail pack follows the traditional rules of direct mail, and you want to make sure that you get the highest possible average cash gift, so you're doing it in direct mail to get that, your email journey may not have to have an ask in it, but it could tell a little bit more of the story to get them across the line. And you could do a lot of testing around that to find out. You could even use it to convert cash givers to regular gift if you've got a 2-wave campaign and wave 1 has direct mail, wave 2 might have email to convert the cash givers to regular gift or something like that. So think about how you can use the data that you've got in more ways and bringing closing the gap between digital and direct mail, because for your audience, it's actually a much more amazing experience to be told this awesome story about someone who has just had a life-changing experience. And they get to not only see it in direct mail on a 2-page or 4-page letter, but they also get a video emailed to them, or they get a little bit of the side story, or they get something else, a little extra content to consume. And as I said before, bear in mind that for-profit and corporate brands are using these channels more and more. So people's attitudes to them are not just based on what charities are doing. People's attitudes are based on what everyone is doing. It differs between market as well. Americans love email. Over the election, I don't know how, but I'm subscribed to so many things that I'm getting daily emails because that's the US model, whereas in the UK, obviously we're adjusting to it. So think about your market a little bit too as well. If we click over, Ashby, the third thing is you can actually take that email list and put that into platforms like the Facebook Business Manager tool. Here, you could offer the same story in a completely different format and target people on Facebook or Instagram. And I'm saying target, but I don't want to paint this with a negative light. This is actually an opportunity for you to tell a story in 3 different channels with the same amazing story, the same characters, maybe unpack the story in video on Instagram or add it as an Instagram story, really lean into the formats on those channels too. So maybe consider like a face-to-camera explanation from your project team on the amazing outcome of that particular case study. So for example, you might have a direct mail pack about someone in a care home in the Midlands, and they've now got access to a transport because you donated to give them access to daily transport or something like that. You could actually have a face-to-camera 30-second video that you could use anywhere else, just done by one of the staffers at that hospice, saying something like, I was really pleased with the outcome. Thank you so much to supporters like you. We can give such and such access to daily transport. That video could be in an email, but it could also be in an Instagram story, targeting the same people. So they're really getting to live this concept in so many different ways.
Following them around.
What's that?
As following them around everywhere. But
I mean, this is where I think it really comes down to how comfortable you and your brand feels with the way you're using your data. And I just have to stress that as well. But I'm fully open to this as a way of communicating with people.
I think as well, like psychologically, that you have to see something 5 times, don't you, before you really engage with it. So actually, it's not that bombarding. Like that's just how the human brain works.
Exactly.
But also we had Max Newton on from Shelter last week talking about how they pivoted their traditional community fundraising into something or really quickly, which is where they were doing like email messaging to their supporters, yes, but then they were recording video content, thanking, putting that on social media, communicating on the channels that the people were communicating with them on, but in videoing good luck, welcome messages, thank you messages, which is just really, you can do that on an iPhone now, can't you? And make it look, it doesn't have to look expensive or bespoke. It can just be kind of a thank you message.
Exactly. So, I'm actually going to cover video in a second as well, but that is so true. Think about what your audience is seeing elsewhere. And a big shout out to the community fundraisers on this call. You guys are so good at going to video and to virtual. I've seen some really amazing examples that I'm going to talk about a little bit as well, but the video is so powerful. Actually, if you hit one more time, I'm going to blow your mind. So there is a functionality. This is something I'm currently working with Sky in the UK on looking at what we can do in Sky TV channels next year with them. They have told me that they have a product called AdSmart where you can upload your email file or your direct mail file and target people, like do strategically targeted in video on demand channels. So direct response TV is a huge channel that a lot of nonprofits use. It can be very expensive. I know that it sometimes takes a huge acquisition investment to want to move into doing DRTV, but through video on demand, you can be much more strategic with your targeting. And it's actually, for some licensing, it's considered digital. So in some markets, it's actually treated as a digital channel. And what you can do is use that same file and target the people who are getting all of your other comms on that amazing concept that you're telling, and also give them TV ads about it. It might cost you a little more as part of your cost per 1,000 impressions, but you're only playing the ad to people that want to see it. It feels more complete to me, more ethical and more kind of down the line. But I would love to discuss this further if anyone has any different perceptions on the data one. This is the one I think I was most worried about because it can be something that people are a little bit unsure about, the privacy policy, not just the word of the privacy policy, but the spirit of the privacy policy. So something to really think about before you just dive straight into custom audiences here and there.
Great. Sorry, just to say as well on the chat, I've had a little bit of trouble getting that up, but Heather, the slides will be shared afterwards, so don't worry about that. And Charlotte, that's a great example. I know WizKids have been doing some really good things. Nice to hear all that feedback as well. And then UK's mentioned AdSmart being really clever and very targeted, expensive. Cool. Okay, next slide.
Next slide. I think we're up to number 6.
Lovely. Yes, we are.
Perfect. So number 6, create communities with Facebook groups. This one is in the harder category. I'm going to show you a couple of examples and really stress that it's not hard so much as it's just you need to take a slightly different approach to the way you treat your organic social media presence. So I'm going to say it was approximately 2016, but sometime around then, Facebook, and so Facebook owns Instagram. So Facebook updated their algorithm across their platforms so that it would favor in the newsfeed the actual human connections that people have when it serves them content. What that means is that brands trying to do organic content were not getting the exposure that they thought they were getting, or they're no longer getting that exposure. What it means is we've had declining engagement rates on social media over the last couple of years as that has kind of manifested from that. There's also more ad inventory space. So the cold hard truth is that Facebook is creating more ad inventory space and taking it away from organic space. It means that you do need to pay to get a foothold in some of these places. But actually, when it comes to community management and engaging with your movements and with your communities, I really strongly suggest Facebook groups to a lot of people. If we click through, I'll show you an example. This is Mindful Monsters by Scope. Again, full disclosure, this is an Open Creates product, but I did not work on it. I didn't manage this client, but this is one of my favorite fundraising things in the history of fundraising. So it's a regular giving product where you sign up with a monthly gift and you'll get a little pack in the mail, I think every quarter, and it's got mindfulness activities for children. It's based on these 4 or 5 cartoon characters, 4 characters, I think, based on these 4 characters. And what happened is a user actually created a Facebook group to pair with the regular giving product. And this Facebook group took on a life of its own. Scope discovered this and realized that this community had sprung up, so they didn't have to do anything. And it became this self-sustaining, just incredible space for creation. As you can see, this is actually a very recent post on that Facebook group where members of the product, so people who are supporters of Scope and use this product, have started crocheting the characters. And it's just, to me, that blows my mind. Like this is an example of community and IG coming together. I just highly recommend you look into Facebook groups, but at the brass tacks of it is that you will have declining engagement rates on the newsfeed and any of the organic content that you do. So Facebook groups are a way for you to get much better reactions and much better engagement with a more defined and niche group of people who actually want to hear from you. Obviously, I have to address that Facebook has gone through a lot of dramas over the last 4 years, particularly around groups, particularly around the election. So I think they are going to be monitoring and maintaining the groups
product a lot more closely, but for nonprofits, I think it's a no-brainer, get involved. If we click to the next slide, I'm gonna humble brag a little bit because at Ecosia, we actually have the Ecosians. It's a Facebook group that we don't actually have to do a lot of work. It's a self-sustaining group. These people, it's a user-led space, and these people share anything and everything that's related to tech and digital. It's related to the environment. It's related to tree planting, reforestation. This community of people really look out for each other. They love each other. We can tell every now and then, like you can see on the screen, we do a little poll and just check in on the kind of content they want. For me, I'm really pushing internally for us to actually look at having more Facebook groups. I think we're only going to see declining engagement on the newsfeed and with our organic program, and it's more an opportunity for us to lean into that and say, well, what other groups could we create? Maybe language-specific groups, because we operate over a couple of different core markets, or as you saw with Mindful Monsters, product-specific groups, area-specific groups. If your social media team is spending all of their time looking at what goes into the newsfeed and the newsfeed is getting declining engagement and declining performance, really think about pivoting some of that time into maintaining a Facebook group and really fostering a community that really feeds on and builds the value of your brand as well.
I suppose it's just, and with all of this, isn't it? It's looking at our own behaviors as well. That's a really nice, like when I go on Facebook now, it is literally to check the groups that I'm part of. I don't bother going through the feed. And so it's about like, how are we behaving? And our audiences are behaving in similar ways, or our profiles. So we need to adapt our approach to those.
Totally. And this is an area that I think corporate brands are trying to create community and value and purpose because they've spent decades not bothering with that stuff. For us as a sector, that is built into, it's coded into our DNA. We don't have to struggle to do this. There is already a highly engaged community that follows your brand and engages with you and wants to support you. All you'd be doing is giving them another way to do that. And you'd be giving a way for you to get your content in front of them in a more measurable and attributable way. Yeah. And I know even local groups for campaigning organizations, I failed to include this actually for some reason, but local groups for Greenpeace and Amnesty, they use groups like this to maintain themselves. It's a really great tool.
And if, I don't know if we've got anyone from Samaritans or Refuge on today, but they've done some really nice work with Facebook groups as well, particularly around the squat challenge and then the walking challenge that Refuge had more recently. So if you're looking for other examples, worth looking at there.
Well, you took the words right out of my mouth. Virtual events, I think, is number 7. Anyway, what were you going to say?
No, that's, I was also going to say, just as we go through all of these points, guys, if there are specific areas that you think, oh, I'd love a more in-depth look at that, do let us know, because it could be that we can curate some future content around that. So feel free to comment in the chat if you're like, right, 5 was really interesting, I'd want more detail on it or whatever, just so that we can kind of make sure we're shaping for the future. So next point, so 7, here we go.
Number 7, take your events online. Here we go. So this is in the harder category because, as I said, community fundraisers, you guys have earned, you've really outdone yourself over the last 6 to 9 months as we've all gone through the lockdowns in all of our markets and in all of the channels that we're trying to use, and our audiences, their psychological situation has changed completely. They're in a completely different place to where they were 12 months ago, and you guys have just responded to that in absolutely, truly amazing ways. The Fundraising Everywhere team, Nikki Bella and Simon Shriver, had an awards event a couple of weeks ago where they just celebrated the amazing community fundraisers taking their events online or coming up with new events. And I was in awe at a lot of them. So if we click through, I'm going to show a couple of examples, but this first one is Havens Hospice. They created a virtual event called Bear Your Roots that was timely, engaging, and accessible. It was created in response to coronavirus, the fact that no one could get their hair cut, and it was led by a collaboration between IG and community, and I think corporate as well. It was just a really amazing campaign, and it was all managed online through Facebook groups and through social media. As I said, go to where your audience is, don't try and force them to come to you. And that doesn't just mean physically, it means on the channels they're using, the messaging you want to use, the communities that they're part of. But yeah, just really amazing examples across the sector, across community teams of what they've done virtually in event management. I think soak all of that up, and we'll really touch on this later, but really post-COVID, things aren't probably not just going to bounce back to where they were, or we shouldn't let them. We should look at these as opportunities to be optimizing our programs well into the future and not just say, you know what, we can be physical again, let's have that physical event. Virtual could optimize your event. Or actually, if we go to the next slide.
Sorry, just before we leave this one, so on something like this, we've got the Haven House or Haven Hospice's logo on the screen. Now, if you were a corporate team and you knew that this event was happening, is there ways to approach corporates to get kind of their logos on screens, or get them to sponsor Facebook groups and have advertising in there? Or do you think that would move away from both of the, or kind of lessen the impact?
What I would say is with Facebook groups, I would be hesitant to introduce any corporates into that space. But generally for event management, I'm trying to think of examples like the Ride London, is that the one? Basically events where there are existing partnerships between corporates and brands. I think that could definitely translate to virtual. I think you need to think about the value of your digital audience. So all of you will have a certain Facebook follow account, a certain Instagram follow account, Twitter account, LinkedIn account, all of the platforms. You'll have a certain level of account and a certain level of engagement and a certain level of just the general quality of your audience in those spaces. And I think it's about recognizing that and communicating that throughout the organization. So for example, I could tell you that I have a mail file of 400,000 people and I could really split that out. My corporate team doesn't know that we have a mail file of 400,000 people who are interested in potential corporate partnerships. Digitally speaking, the corporate team probably doesn't know the true value of your digital audience necessarily. So that's absolutely correct. Think about that when you're having a corporate partnership, packaging what else you've got to offer or bring to the table as far as first-party data that you hold, email addresses you hold, but also your social media following and your engagement rates. Having a smaller audience that's more engaged is more valuable than having a larger audience that barely engages. And the algorithms are built that way. So it's called a social graph, sits behind the social media platforms. And the algorithm will recognize when someone has a much smaller following, but they're actually more engaged. So yeah, absolutely. There is definitely ways for corporates to get involved with these virtual events. However, I would probably just say that I think a lot of the magic of a Facebook group is that it's a closed space that doesn't have a lot of brand presence. So you as a single brand could build up that community, but you would be engaging with them based on your values and on the content they want to receive. Maybe think about how comfortable you are with that, specifically introducing corporates into that space.
I think that's just my new business experience saying like, sell anything, get it out, get
the brand in. Totally. I mean, I'm a salesman at heart as well. I'm selling nonprofit, but I'm still selling. Anyway, and this other example, this is a pivot from a physical event to a virtual event. This is an absolute showstopper for me. These were another one of the winners from the awards ceremony last week. The Stroke Association took their offline stroke assembly online, making it far more accessible. And this is what I was saying before, it drove up their ROI. So when you look at the fact that an event has overheads, you have insurance, you have all of the other things that come with running an event. If you stripped all that away and you just got to the pure core of what you're trying to do, which is to bring a community together, to engage with each other, to knowledge share, to connect, there are ways to do that virtually and actually do it more frequently and have a bigger and more powerful impact on that individual, but also generate the funds that you need to generate through your community fundraising or your events fundraising program. Over the years, we've seen virtual events increase. Like before COVID, obviously there was like My Marathon, I think was maybe one of the early ones with, I can't remember which nonprofit did it. I'm gonna say the Heart Foundation, a nonprofit in the UK, the My Marathon, where you could do a marathon in your own time as opposed to having to commit to being in a physical place and doing a physical marathon at a certain time. So these things have been done for years, but actually in the face of coronavirus, a lot of events and community teams have had to pivot quite suddenly into that. So what I would say is look for opportunities to BHF. Yes, it was BHF. Look for opportunities to make your events, take them online, and you will see an increase in ROI just naturally, but also it's such an opportunity. It's not that it's ripped the rug out from under your program. It's actually an amazing opportunity to connect people in ways that you couldn't have done before. And as Ashby said a couple of times, really bringing your different teams together and throwing out the silos. We don't have silos at this house. We just have people who want to do good and run solid fundraising programs and communities that want to engage with them.
Great. And yeah, the Teenage Cancer Trust have done some great stuff there as well. So thanks for mentioning that too in the chat.
Cool.
And number 8.
Number 8, I'm not going to spend too much time on it. This is something that is a little more, it's still in the harder category. It's a little more like blue ocean thinking, but I wanted to put it out there. And you really have to put your audience first when you think about this one, but bring your direct mail to life with augmented reality or AR. If you click over to the next slide, there's a bit of a pic of what it looks like, but The first time I saw this was actually a breast cancer charity in Australia in 2013 or 2014. And they sent out a direct mail pack, and then there was an app you had to download to play a video that kind of came to life for you. And it was in the time where that was really quite unique. The entire world is forecasting that augmented reality is going to be the next big thing, and all corporates are talking about it, big brands are talking about it. It doesn't necessarily have to cost a lot of money, but you just need to make sure it's actually adding value to what you're doing and it's what your audience wants. If you're trying to if you're trying to add value but it's not quite hitting the mark, or you're making it more difficult for them to support you, then I definitely wouldn't recommend doing it. But actually, it's an opportunity to bring print to life. And as we were saying, if direct mail is having a renaissance with all audiences, this is something that you could consider doing if you were looking at maybe a younger or a different kind of audience that might actually want to download an additional app. The way that this is going is that AR will be built into the camera app on a lot of the new or existing platforms. So AR, I believe, and I really am forecasting, is going to be so ubiquitous very soon. And it's something that could add a lot of value to some of your more traditional channels. Even it's not just direct mail, but also leaflet drops, any of the other printed collateral distribution channels that you might use. And events, it could be a great way to add value to any event welcome packs. I mean, anything, literally anything. So yeah, we'll move past that one. It's a bit, this one was a bit, I was a bit nervous about it. I was like, it's a bit crazy, but I'm going to put it out there anyway.
I think the messages don't stop changing, right? If we start going back into a normal world, now the vaccine's there, like don't just revert, as Josh has already mentioned, revert back to the way that we've always done things. We constantly need to be evolving and pivoting.
Exactly.
The augmented reality is the next one.
So as I said, corporates are going in a lot of these directions. We as a sector, if we can work so that all of our supporters are loving augmented reality, or we're really trying to work with each other to make the sector a more digital space, it's going to benefit everyone. Whereas, yeah, corporates are already doing it or looking into it, and it's something I think we just need to keep an eye on. Number 9, we're nearly at the finish mark, so thank you for bearing with me. Invest in video. We talked about this a little bit earlier. It is in the hardest category, and that's because it can take a big financial and human resources investment. You could need agency support. However, that's not always the case. Traditional direct response TV, you might have to work with an agency. It could be that you have to make a minimum media spend of £100,000 just to get a foot in the door. The channels and the audiences could be very specific, or the creative has a very specific tone to it. But if you click through to the next slide, I'm going to show you an example. Well, sorry. What I wanted to show you. Yeah, no, click through. Sorry, my mistake. What I did want to mention as well is audience sizes by channel. So Facebook is, above all, the biggest platform in the world, 2.6 billion people globally. That penetration, a lot of that is actually in emerging markets, but it also is a very highly used channel, even with our audiences. So you might think that your audience isn't on Facebook. I guarantee you they are. YouTube is actually number 2. And I think if you click to the next slide, I've jazzily highlighted it in magenta, just to make a point. Oh, back one. Sorry, no, that's all right.
I thought I did that with magic. I was like, I clicked on it.
You've turned it pink. YouTube actually has 2 billion users, monthly active users globally, and that is growing aggressively. This data, I think, is from the start of 2020. There has been a marked and significant increase in the amount of video consumed as a result of the coronavirus in all audiences. There's no age or different gender demos around this. It is just everyone is consuming more of it on the YouTube platform, but video is actually also increasingly a big part of Facebook and Instagram. And I'm going to show you an example of that in a sec. But if we click through to the next slide, I've got a really amazing example of a nonprofit that is using video or has used video just in a show-stopping way. So Sick Kids is a Canadian healthcare charity. They used powerful, high-quality video at the heart of a total brand refresh a couple of years ago. What they were doing was changing the narrative and the way they talked about their beneficiaries. So the children became the heroes, which is very easy to say and very easy to maybe put down on a 2-page letter, but video actually just, these videos blow my mind. The video, that's a clickable link. So when you get this resource, if you haven't watched it already, I implore you, this is the video you have to watch. It's a couple of years old now, but as Katie has just said, it's an absolutely brilliant campaign. This, to me, I use this example constantly, even with corporates. This is something that corporates should be aspiring to. I don't know if they used it on television, like commercial television. I don't know if they used it on video on demand. I don't know if they used it on YouTube, but all of these are places to use video. Video can be a response channel or a brand channel, a response creative or a brand creative. If we go to the next slide, I'm going to show you a little bit about, Yes, Grammarly. So what I want to say here, YouTube is, as I said, it's a huge channel. It's a growing channel, and it is a response channel. So you can use an ad format called True View for Action. It is a response format where you only pay for a view, and YouTube considers a view to be 30 seconds of watching. So it's a really specific cost model. It is absolutely fantastic. With YouTube, what they actually do is publish a leaderboard every year for the best True View for Action videos based on actual data and performance. So Grammarly are a brand that, I don't know if you know them, they're an installation, a browser install and a mobile app that offers free, I'm doing a hard sell for Grammarly, but I
no, that's fine. Let's just in time, let's move reasonably quickly, Josh.
Oh, sorry, yeah. Sorry, anyway, video, follow Grammarly, check out the leaderboard and see what you can do. Moving on. Facebook Live and IGTV. This is something that could benefit you in community fundraising, grants and trusts, anywhere that video could add value to what you're doing. So this is actually an example from Ecosia. This is our video editorial lead chatting with our director of trees, so our project leader. And we put this out on Facebook Live, IGTV, Instagram are heavily investing in IGTV and video content to try and close the gap with YouTube there. So I recommend getting involved in live video. This is, as Ashby was saying, it doesn't have to be all singing, all dancing, bells and whistles. It can be authentic, rough and ready, inside track, straight to the point, and add so much value to what you're doing. We'll race on to number 10. This one I've joyfully called Too Hard, Go Back in bright red. I don't think this is too hard, but I did want to include it. It's just something that if you've got a solid program and you're looking at really the icing on the cake for digital, there's a couple of really strong examples. So don't just call, message instead. If we click through, I'll show you messenger apps. So Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp are actually, after Facebook and YouTube, the biggest audiences around the world. And you need to ask yourself how you can get in front of them or how you can take advantage of that. One more slide in. So wait, we're now racing to the finish line, but we're nearly there. MSF, to me, I'm pretty sure these guys were one of the early players with organic WhatsApp. And I remember chatting to MSF UK, I don't know, 5 years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I think they were using the broadcast feature on WhatsApp to send authentic from the field content to a group of people that had subscribed to want to follow that. It's an amazing retention tool. It's WhatsApp has actually developed a WhatsApp for Business product that you can now use WhatsApp. It's like to tie it into your product a little bit more for user feedback, for engaging with people. And if we click one more time, this is probably the most amazing example of using WhatsApp. But Gronya Callan and her team, at the Greenpeace UK, have worked with an agency, I think it's called Relay, to introduce a paid WhatsApp program to sit alongside their telemarketing and really looking at speaking to users in the channels that they're in and meeting them where they are by having the same conversations you would have on telemarketing, but in WhatsApp, and being more of a genuine dialogue with supporters rather than a call that they get every quarter to tell them a quick story and ask for a quick buck. This is an opportunity to build up a longer term relationship with people. They've invested in a team and that team works on WhatsApp communication. So yeah, WhatsApp is definitely something you could consider as part of your paid.
We're probably going to have to skip this one, Josh, because I don't.
Skip it. That's fine. Dead to me.
So great, and we've still got a few minutes, everyone. So don't feel like you have to rush off. We're not quite at midday, but here's how you can get in touch with Josh. So I'll send this all round afterwards. Please do give us a shout out on LinkedIn with him too. And then the really exciting thing is you get an opportunity to speak to Josh as well. So anyone that's attended today, I'll send around a email at the end CCing Josh in, and if you want to have kind of a free 20-minute chat with him, then he's happy to do so. And I'm sure he's got loads more that I've not allowed him to speak about in here because of time limits. But yes, so I guess thank you so much, Josh. That was so interesting and really useful for all of us to kind of have and take on. As I said, everyone, if you've enjoyed this, please do connect with Josh on LinkedIn, reach out to him, share on LinkedIn as well. We're going to post the recording on YouTube. So if you can go to that, subscribe to our channel, that would be very helpful. But also any feedback that you've got, do reply to the email that I send around before close of play today, which and I will also share the chat. But if you've got any suggestions on what you'd like to see Josh speak about again in the future, we'll try and rein him back in at some point.
I've got more to say. You had to cut me off. I've got so much more to say.
I know, we were talking about hand signals, right? But yes, please do give us your feedback. That would be great. Thank you, Josh, so much for coming on. That was amazing.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. And as Ashby said, if there's anything you want to ask about, talk about, just reach out. I'm more than happy to help. I really think this is an opportunity for the entire sector to think about what it looks like in the future, not just going back to what we already know. So yeah, there's so much we could do.
Great. And as I said at the beginning, if you have any recruitment needs, we do work across the digital area, and this is all part of Josh has been upskilling us behind the scenes. So get in touch if you need anything. And thank you so much for everyone attending, both on YouTube and on Zoom. And we'll look forward to seeing you at future ones. Perfect.